Hello, welcome to another managerial special from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm Craig Sanger. With me, as always, is Mr. Daniel Cody. Today, we are talking about Blackburn Rovers. They have appointed Jon Dahl Tomasson as their new head coach. He replaces Tony Mowbray, who lasted 5 years at the club. A statement from Blackburn Rovers says as follows. They are delighted to announce the appointment of Jon Dahl Tomasson as head coach on a contract through to June 2025. After an exhaustive selection process over recent weeks, which included first and second stage interviews with the shortlisted candidates, Jon became the club's preferred choice and arrives at Rovers, having led Swedish side Malmo to back-to-back league titles. The 45-year-old joins at Ewood Park with a new assistant coach and performance director, but will work closely with coaches David Lowe, Davian Johnson, and Ben Benson. The CEO, Steve Wagger, said it's been a long process, but we're really pleased to eventually secure the services of such a young and ambitious coach in Jon. His work around developing players is exactly what we need at this juncture. Jon will work closely with Gregg Broughton and the new director of football who's just been appointed at Blackburn, myself and the board, and what we hope was an exciting chapter in the club's history. Right, so Tony Mowbray didn't get that new deal. Jon Dahl Tomasson in. Are your initial thoughts on that?
First thoughts were Tony Mowbray, let's get that bit out of the way. Did a solid job, probably didn't have the best last half of the season. I think, ironically, if their season had been the other way round, he probably would have got a new deal if they'd started poorly and then finished as well as they started. But it wasn't to be. Obviously, it's a very young squad. I think they had one of the youngest 11s in the Championship last year. But overall, brought them back up from League One, built them in the Championship from a bottom half side up to a side that almost competed for the playoffs towards the end of the season. He did a good job. This one, I'm really 50-50 on, and I'm very rarely like that with these manager appointments, but I don't quite know what to make. There's a couple of things about Jon Dahl Tomasson that are unique, which I'll talk about later, but my main feeling, as ours was across the podcast group chat, was 90s football nostalgia, I think.
He did have a brief stint in England at Newcastle and was disastrous, but
Champions League winner.
Champions League winner, but then again, Jimmy Traore is a Champions League winner, and so is Ryan Brewster a Champions League winner. So that means diddly squat. No, a good player, obviously very good with the national side of Denmark, but his managerial career to start with didn't get off to the best of starts.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird managerial career. He's quite a unique character in that sense. He started quite quickly after his playing career spells at Excelsior and Roda, and the second of those was particularly disastrous. 3.5-year deal, bit similar to the long contract he's got here. Half a year into it, they were relegated and he was off. So maybe a checkered start, and based on that, you might make some preconceptions, you might make some judgments on him. But the thing I really like about him is he took a step away. He went out, he did some assistant coaching, he did some coaching, he learned his trade elsewhere and came back a more mature manager in 2020. Obviously worked with some high-profile players. He'd been involved in a Denmark setup as well as an assistant. But then when he came back to Malmo, really did a good job. You've got to be fair to him. They're a side that would have expected to be up there, and they were. He got a 55% win ratio. I think probably his crowning achievement was taking them to the Champions League group stages rather than his domestic achievements. But he won back-to-back titles, did a solid job rather than a mighty spectacular one. But maybe showed the credentials that with young players, as are often developed in the Scandinavian leagues, in tight title races and leagues where teams are pretty similarly matched, something we know that happens in a championship, show credentials. So I think based on that, there are some signs of positivity, but it's a lot of change at Blackburn Rovers, particularly with the director of football as well. And it's going to be a slow building process, I think. And the 3-year deal's fine for that. But if Blackburn are looking to build on where they finished last year, just outside the playoffs, that's going to be a lot of pressure in what is basically the world's hardest league, isn't it?
Yeah, he got given that 3-year deal. I think over recent times, obviously, Tony Mowbray went to Blackburn in 2017 and got given time. And you can probably see that Blackburn would be given time. As they said in their statement, it's a young squad. But you feel that main squad, the main thing they have to prioritise is keeping Ben Brereton Diaz.
Yeah, you would have thought so, but let's be honest, I don't think it's going to happen because obviously they exercised the 1-year contract extension, but I'd imagine they're going to get some pretty decent offers this summer. The alternative is to sell him at a cut price in January or for free next summer. I'd actually be inclined to look at it the other way. If you can find another striker, which is, if you can get 15, 20 million for a man with 1 year left on his contract, who's a good striker, obviously doing well at international level, then maybe you can rebuild half a squad with that. That probably gives him and a new director of football, someone we know from Luton and Gregg Broughton, who's then got plenty of time and plenty of money to build a squad that maybe can compete at the top. I'm actually thinking from a selfish point of view from Jon Dahl Tomasson as well. I think the pressure will be lessened if they lose Ben Brereton Diaz. I think if he's still there, the expectations are probably to be a playoff competing side again. Whereas if he goes, there might be that little bit of, okay, we accept you've got to rebuild. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if he loses him, but obviously it's not a good thing for Blackburn Rovers.
You said it's a young squad. I think they got found out near the end. They had that peak in November after that 7-0 defeat to Fulham, and then got to February, and then it all went disastrous last season. Maybe that was a bit of naivety in that young Rovers squad. Do you think they would have learned from that from last season?
It was a bit of a weird championship season, wasn't it? There were a few sides at the top that had a lot of injuries. Some coped better than others. There were, as you mentioned, with a young squad, you're always going to have inconsistency. And Blackburn just had a spell where they could not score without Diaz, had a couple of other players out of form up top, and it just went apart. I think, did they go 7 games without scoring, wasn't it? And then they scored 1 free kick after that. So it was a difficult spell. I think they will have learned from it. Let's be honest, in terms of the squad, it boils down to how much of a turnover of style of play there's going to be, which I don't think is going to be huge because I can see the similarities in his and Mowbray's style. They've always tried to play decent football, in fairness to them. And looking ahead to the season, it's, do you keep Ben Brereton Diaz and then do you get goals elsewhere? Because I think that was the big issue. When Diaz was out, you didn't see where the goals were coming from. And that's maybe where he's got to find ways for midfielders to contribute, for players to get up and support, make late runs into the box. And that's probably going to define Blackburn's season for me.
I think that's the key bit. It was scoring goals when the main man's out. Bradley Dack has been injured for pretty much the whole season, and he will need a very good pre-season to get back into up to speed. And you never know. Like, you don't want to see players out for such a long time. And Bradley Dack's got the ability to get on that goal scoring run just as much as Brereton Diaz. So there's that in that sort of way. Defensively, Darragh Lenihan has been linked with a move away. I think he's out of contract. It'd be interesting to see who he keeps and what he might add to that squad. But looking to the next season, how do you see it panning out for Jon Dahl Tomasson?
Well, I hope he's given time because I don't think they're going to be able to do this immediately. It's where the expectations are. We've said it in the other ones. It's been a trend, actually. We've done 3 manager specials this summer. They're all young, ambitious coaches that haven't got the greatest depth of experience. But if he's given time, I think he can be a success here. He's got a really good team behind him. I like the fact that they've gone sort of half and half on new staff and keeping some of the old heads in the club. People like Damian Johnson, we know, who have played for them as well. So it does keep that little bit of balance of familiar voices and a few new ones as well. I think he can be a success. I think the recruitment is going to be key, and it doesn't look like something as a head coach he's going to be the lead on. It looks like that's going to be down to Gregg Broughton, but he is a very good person for the level that they're at. So I would expect Ben Brereton Diaz to go. I would expect there to be 5 or 6 new faces coming in, maybe 1 or 2 experienced ones just dotted in the squad as well, but largely a focus on young players. He's got great experience as a player. He's obviously used to winning in his last managerial job. But the Championship is such a difficult league. We've got 3 sides coming down. One's going to have a new manager. 2 virtually always yo-yo clubs you'd expect to be up there. Loads of teams that were up at the top end last season and a few that disappointed, like your West Bromwich Albion, who were in mid-table. It's going to be stacked in that chase for the playoffs. And for Blackburn, I can't look at it now and say confidently that they're going to be able to come out on top in that race and reach the playoffs. So I think they're going to be in the picture. I think they're going to be a top half side again, but I do still have a slight worry about where the goals come from outside the main striker, who I don't think will be there. So I would say, as a gut instinct, based on what we've currently know, they'll probably be in the top half again, but outside the playoffs. And I hope that's enough for Jon Dahl Tomasson, because I don't think they can just expect to be in the top 6, but with the right recruitment, it's certainly a possibility. And it's nice to see the club progressing and on the up again after what were a few pretty disastrous years prior.
Yeah, I think they'll be mid-table. I think they got ahead of themselves last season in probably what they probably think they were going to end up. And that's not a disrespect to Tony Mowbray and how he got on. And obviously, yeah, they were in the top 2 for a brief bit in the playoffs, and then obviously they faded away. But shows there's signs there that this squad can actually do something. They're still young. They've got a good couple of years ahead of them. I think because the Championship's so strong, so strong, especially next season, I don't expect them to be in the playoff hunt. And I'm definitely won't be predicting them to be in the playoff hunt and in come middle of July. So I think mid-table first season, mid-table will be all right. Then probably the second season, I do expect them to push. Maybe a bit of recruitment. Obviously, I expect Brendan Diaz to definitely be gone by the second season, by 2020, by the end of 2023. But yeah, if he gets given time, like Mowbray got given time, yeah, I expect him to last 3 years. But yeah, mid-table for me. Season 2, push on for playoffs, and then hopefully probably be a top 6 side by the end of the third season.
It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because like with him and with Michael Beale, the last manager special, we just don't really know what to expect. There's so much of a trend towards young coaches, and even like Rob Edwards at Watford, who you'd normally bank on to be right up there. You just don't know what you're going to get, and it's going to make the Championship even more exciting than normal, especially with a nice 6-week break in the middle of the season.
Yeah, because obviously the World Cup is happening in November. But that is our thoughts on the hiring of Jon Dahl Tomasson as the new Blackburn head coach. Let us know in the comments what you think of his appointment and how long do you think he will last in the Blackburn job. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, so you can follow us on Twitter at Honest Football Free, and we'll see you next time.